So Simon Jordan on TalkSport made some comments about Anthony Joshua a week or so ago. He said that if Daniel Dubois catches him with a big punch, AJ might have a PTSD-style flashback to the night he was stopped by Andy Ruiz. And so this has sparked a debate about Anthony Joshua's chin. Does he have a glass chin? Has he got a good chin? And that all really depends on how you define these things. But unsurprisingly, Eddie Hearn has come out defending his fighter Anthony Joshua and basically trying to argue that he's got a good chin. He spoke about the shots that AJ was able to take and come back from in the Klitschko fight, in the Dylan White fight, and so on. And so here's my assessment. Anthony Joshua definitely doesn't have the worst chin I've ever seen on a heavyweight. Guys like Herbie Hyde, Michael Mora, Michael Bent, Tommy Morrison, even David Price were more vulnerable in that department than Anthony Joshua. But AJ certainly doesn't have the best chin I've ever seen on a heavyweight either. I mean, that should go without saying. If I were to rank AJ's chin out of 10, I'd give it a 5. I'd say AJ's chin is about average for a heavyweight. Not terrible, not good, certainly not iron jaw, just average, right there in the middle. I certainly don't agree with Eddie Hearn that he's got a good chin. At least not the way I would define a good chin. So I'll give you an example of why I don't think Anthony Joshua's got a good chin. He's often been compared to Frank Bruno in the past, and stylistically, I've always said I just don't see it. AJ and Frank Bruno are very, very different stylistically. AJ's far more athletic than Frank Bruno ever was. But there is one thing that they do have in common, which is poor recuperative powers. So Frank Bruno was a guy who actually wasn't that easy to knock over. The only time he really went over easily was in the first Mike Tyson fight. He gets dropped within the first few seconds of the bout. It was really just a flash knockdown. Bruno got up and he took much harder shots for the remainder of the fight and never went down again. In the 5th round in particular, Mike Tyson must have hit Frank Bruno with about 25 flush punches, unanswered shots. Not just the uppercuts from that famous clip where he's against the ropes. No, if you watch that whole 5th round, Frank Bruno's being beaten from pillar to post with all sorts of shots, uppercuts, hooks, overarm shots, everything going in. And he's reeling all around the ring, but he won't go down. And he's got Mike Tyson coming at him, loading up on everything. So Bruno wasn't an easy guy to knock over. But whenever he got hurt, he would freeze up. There'd be no punches coming back from him. Very little clinching. He would go into this almost zombie-like state. And he would stay in that state for a long time. This is what I mean by poor powers of recovery. He just couldn't recover very quickly from being hurt. The best example of this would be the Lennox Lewis fight. So it's a very competitive fight, but Bruno gets caught with a big left hook early in the 7th round. And he just freezes up. And for the next, it might be 20 seconds, Lennox Lewis is just teeing off. And Bruno's just standing there, like swaying left and right, getting battered by all these big punches. Anthony Joshua is similar to that. Now, I would say AJ is a bit easier to knock over than Frank Bruno, but at the same time, he isn't quite as passive as Bruno is when he gets hurt. But he stays hurt for a long time. Just like Bruno. His mind remains in this fog and he can't seem to find his way out of it. When Anthony Joshua lost to Andy Ruiz, he was in his 20s. So this wasn't an older fighter with wear and tear. No, this was a fresh, young fighter. He gets hurt in the 3rd round and he never really recovers from it. His legs are never quite the same. His coordination is never quite the same after that 3rd round. And his decision making is strange, because after dropping Andy Ruiz, he got himself dropped, he got himself in trouble by trying to exchange with him on the inside, trying to swap left hooks with him. You would have thought if he had his wits about him, he'd make the adjustment. Okay, let me not hook with this guy. Let me not exchange with this guy. Keep everything on the outside, straight shots. When he gets close, tie him up, maybe jab to his body here and there. But you go back and watch the Andy Ruiz fight. AJ starts exchanging hooks with Ruiz in the 7th round. Again. And that's how he gets caught and dropped in the 7th. And to me, that's indicative of a guy who just wasn't in his right state of mind because he was still groggy. He was still hurt. Now compare and contrast that to when Luis Ortiz, who was in his 40s, fought Andy Ruiz several years later. It's evident that Ortiz's punch resistance had been deteriorating since those Deontay Wilder fights. And so against Andy Ruiz, he was dropped several times, yes. But unlike Anthony Joshua, he went the distance. Despite being a much older, more jaded fighter than Anthony Anthony Joshua. He was able to recover more quickly after being dropped and hurt by Andy Ruiz. Think about that. So no, I can't agree with Eddie Hearn that Anthony Joshua has a good chin. I'd say he's got an average chin, 5 out of 10. And because he's only got an average chin, he's a guy who can't take so many risks with his chin. And as far as which fighters I would say have a good chin at heavyweight, Filip Hrgović, he's got a very good chin. Jarrell Miller, I would say he's got a good chin. Never been down in a fight. He did get stopped on his feet by Daniel Dubois, but never down. Mariusz Wach was the king of the Iron Jaws in the heavyweight division for a long time. He's obviously older now, and his chin's probably not quite what it was, although probably still better than most. Alexander Usyk has got a good chin, although his chin hasn't been tested to the same extent as Filip Hrgovic's chin, for example, because Usyk's defense is much better than Hrgovic's defense. He doesn't get caught with as many clean shots. I'd say Tyson Fury has a good chin, not an iron jaw, because you can knock him down, but he has these very good powers of recovery. And maybe his powers of recovery are starting to wane a little bit based upon what we saw there in the Usyk fight, but certainly in the past, we've all seen it. Tyson Fury's able to recover incredibly quickly from being dropped and hurt. So I'd say Fury's chin is maybe like a 7, something like that. Perhaps give Usyk an 8. And Mariusz Wach a few years ago, I'm going to say was a 10 out of 10, that chin. Tremendous chin. Hrgović maybe, I don't know, 9. But sometimes having a really good chin can be a double-edged sword, because fighters who have really good chins are sometimes not as concerned as they should be about getting hit clean. Yes, you have the luxury of being able to take some risks with your chin, put yourself in some vulnerable positions in order to get your own shots off. But you don't want to throw caution to the wind completely. That's how you end up punch drunk. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the whole Anthony Joshua chin debate. Leave me your thoughts in the comment section below.